Welcome back to Season 5 of the True Blue Conversations podcast with your host, Adam Bloom. Podcasters, Adam's book, Easy Target, Taming the Black Dog, is now available for pre-order. Head on over to Booktopia, Dimmicks and Big Sky Publishing to pre-order your copy and be one of the first to read Adam's story of surviving to thriving and how he escaped the cycle of being an easy target. Easy Target, Taming the Black Dog by Adam Bloom. Coming soon. G'day podcasters. Before we get underway with True Blue Conversations, just wanted to give a huge shout out to our friend and sponsor, the Warrior U podcast, hosted by Bram Connolly. Bram is a former Special Forces commander, best-selling author, popular podcast host, and human optimization pioneer. He has an authentic style and the unique ability to not only motivate, but also take people on a journey of self-discovery. Through the Warrior U podcast, Bram interviews guests in a bid to explore all things human optimization, resilience, leadership, and coffee. His book, The Commando Way, a Special Forces Commander's Lessons for Life, Leadership and Success, is available now on amazon.com.au. So from Adam Bloom and all of us here at True Blue Conversations, a big shout out to the Warrior U podcast, Bram Connolly, and his new book, The Commando Way, out now. We'd like to thank Tactical Recovery for sponsoring this show. Head on over to tacticalrecovery.com.au and use the code TRUEBLUE for one hell of a discount. Tactical Recovery, magnesium-based muscle care, salty products for sore fuckers. Welcome, loyal listeners of True Blue Conversations. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Australian Warfighter Coffee. Veteran owned and run, driven by a simple yet powerful motto: people over profit. Every dollar goes towards supporting veterans and first responder charity groups. Head on over to AustralianWarfighters.com and use the code TRUEBLUE for your exclusive discount. Because let's face it, any other coffee is just brown sadness water. Now, let's get on with the show.
G'day! Welcome back to True Blue Conversations. I'm Adam Bloom. Today I'm joined by a special guest, a great mate of mine, and Mitch Parker. And Mitch is a former New South Wales police officer, and he's joined us today to talk about and a retained Fire Rescue New South Wales firefighter. And he's joined us today to talk about his career in the police force and also his life in being a retained firefighter. So, Mitch Parker, thanks so much for joining us on True Blue Conversations.
Thanks, Adam. It's great to be here, mate.
Nah, mate, it's an absolute honour and privilege to have you on. So, Mitch, before we get into when you joined the police, can you give us a little bit of a background about you as a young fella growing up? What were you like at school? Do you have any brothers and sisters? And yeah, just tell us a little bit about Mitch Parker as a young fella.
Yeah. Well, mate, first I started redhead, so I was given the dodgy card from the get-go. But no, mate, look, I grew up on the northern end of the Central Coast, sort of bottom end of Lake Macquarie. We're on that sort of borderline there. Mate, my father is an ambulance, retired now, long-serving ambulance paramedic. Mother worked within the exec with health. Mate, went to a local primary school, local high school. How did I go? That's a good question. Look, I was a grey mum. Mum and dad are always up me. Oh, you need to try more, and I just I think I just went there for the social aspect as well. As I said, never got in any strife or anything, mate. I just went along and went to school and did what I had to do, and or didn't do what I had to do. But hey, I've still got there. I got the HSC. Regardless, we're not going to talk about scores or marks, but So mate, that was me growing up.
And for you was like, so you mentioned that your dad was a paramedic. Were you was that the drawing card or the draw card for you to go, I actually want to join and be a police officer or ambulance or fire? Where, like, was that a big driving factor for you?
Yeah, I think so, mate. I'm not too sure. Like I said, Dad, all I ever knew was, Dad was an ambo, or even in the old days, he'd say, "I'm an ambulance driver," and people used to think he just drove the ambulance, but and like Dad, he started in the '60s, late '60s as an ambulance officer back then, and yeah, it sort of motivated me. My dad's brother was also an ambo, and late Uncle Alan, and he was also he was actually, I think he was the deputy captain of the old Campbelltown fire station when it was retained back in the olden days. I'm sure it was Campbelltown. So, so I had that in my family. Both my grandfathers were veterans of the Second World War. So I had a little bit of service in my sort of immediate family. But I always had that. I think I knew from a very young age I wanted to be in that first responder service of some description, and it was the police that always appealed to me.
So for you mentioned that you had that willingness to go first responder, but did you ever have the inkling of, well, I might go down the military path, or was it always for you just first responder?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. So I think I joined my local rural fire or bushfire brigades. I'm pretty sure is what they were back then. It was in the process of changing to what we know now as the New South Wales Rural Fire Service. That was in '98. So I joined my local brigade, which was your traditional bushfire brigade. Great. It was a family, but it was also really welcoming, and there was a lot of experience there. So I loved that from the get-go. I was 16 when I kicked that off. But as we go back to my schooling, my HSC marks didn't quite get. I can't even remember what was required of the cops back then, because at that point that's all I wanted to do was the police. That was my number one job. And then I fell into an apprenticeship as a fitter and turner, or fitter and machinist, and hated it. Absolutely hated it. I'm thankful because I've still, some of those skills I learnt are still used today. But yeah, it was sort of when I was trying to work out how to get into the police, because at that time you could have a trade or a certificate, or I think it was like a uni degree, a trade. There's some sort of qualification framework, and I didn't have any of them. And I was on the way to the trade, but I wasn't enjoying my trade, so I was trying to find different ways. And that's when they opened up the Charles Sturt. This would have been, I think, around. Actually, it was late 2000, early '01. They introduced a bridging course, so basically showed the university you had the aptitude to complete what was required of the diploma of policing practice. So I went and did that. Very fortunate. Once again, mate, I had no idea what I was doing. And I had a good mate of mine who was at uni. So essentially he did it for me with me right beside. and yeah, surprise, surprise. It was a pass or fail. It wasn't graded. But at the time when they introduced that course, it was guaranteed entry into the academy, pending all the other ducks had lined up. But I had a hurdle with that, didn't I? So I had the academic side of it, but I got myself a little speeding fine. So yeah, done a fair number on that. That was Australia Day 2001. So that put a spanner in the works, but that also changed my view. And back to your question about military, I was looking at, and probably get a lot of haters out there, but I was set on the Air Force. So and so the what they call it, the RAFSAS, the Yankees. So I've since heard a lot about that, but that was what I had that interest in them.
Yep. And for you, I guess at that time you were talking, 2000, 2001 was, September 11 was around. So that was, there was a big driving factor for the military side. But you, as you say, you went down you stayed on your path of you wanted to serve in the police force, and you joined the New South Wales Police in 2003. And what do you remember of your time at the academy, and what challenges did you have to overcome at the academy, and what did you learn about yourself?
I loved it, mate. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was going to be, real beast mode, like flogged and yelled at and screamed at and PT and bits and pieces. I soon learned that wasn't the case. We had a snippet of that when we had the old style public order, one of the old legends of that space coming around a course for us just for basic public order stuff is when we got absolutely beasted. But look, to be honest with you, mate, it was a really good. We started in 2003, and we were a class of. I started what they call distance education, and I still remember. And this is the old days. So the computers existed, but the communication between email and technology didn't exist. So it was the old letterbox, literally waiting for something in the post, and I knew that it was going to be around a certain time. I did my application. I'd overcome my hurdle probably because I got sick of me at police recruitment ringing, can I start yet? They said, all right, if you're clear between this date, we'll accept something. So I did my application, and I actually got a letter saying, no, you're not suitable. But they created 2 files for me because of my traffic history. And I said, and my mum helped me write a letter and wrote back and said, once again, it's taking time. And then they said, "Oh, yep, sorry, we've seen that. It's an oversight. You're now in the pool waiting for to go to be able to put in an academy." So I remember, I can't recall the time. So it was September 2003. I started officially. I'm pretty sure it was September 2003. Now, I would have got the offer about 2 months before that or thereabouts, and I got a letter, and it had a big sticker on the back saying distance education, and I'm like, what the fuck's distance education? Like, what's this about? I was 20 maybe or something, 21. Like, I want to get out. Like, and I remember ringing and it's congratulations, you've been accepted into distance education. And I'm like, what the hell? So I rang up the academy and I spoke to the coordinator, and Bruce Guy was his name. And he said to me, he goes, "You're one of the happy calls I've had today, Mitch." He said, "There's a lot of people that weren't successful and they're ripping it into me." And he gave me a number of options, but essentially I'd defer and could go full time the next. But he said, my suggestion to you, it's a very competitive. There was a pool at the time, about 5,000, I think, trying to get in, far cry from what they see today. And there was 80 full-timers and 120 that were offered distance ed. So very, very small classes. So anyway, I did my time through distance ed. And then you do so basically your first 3 months is broken into 6 months of distance education. Then you do 3 or 3.5 months full time. So went down there, but we filled both what they call session 1 and session 2 in the first 8 towers, which is the old towers at the police academy. So that was the entire course back then. So it was really good times. It was small groups of people. You pretty much knew your whole class to an extent, and I really enjoyed it. It was tough, I guess, at times at academic side of things, but mate, just I need to knuckle down because I've been given this unique opportunity, and come out the other side, mate. And I marched out 27th of August 2004, and mate, I was proud as punch. Like, just loved it.
What class were you, Mitch?
So they changed it. So I was DPP 19, and then they went back to the old class numbers, and I think I think it's 292, which was part of my registered number. So believe it or not, that's why I recall that. So, 292, I think, was the class that it was. But originally we were what they called DPP 19, which was Diploma of Policing Practice Course 19.
Mm-hmm. And for you, what was obviously you had to wait so long to get in, and then you got in, and what was it like on your, like when you did your prac side of things? Was that an eye opener to what you were going to face when you actually got out to your first station?
Yeah, I guess I had a bit of it was. I was very fortunate, once again, different era to what we see today or even saw 10 years ago, and I had a lot of old school, what they call pre-88ers. And there was this big thing of you can't put the student at risk. So we were referred to as students. We weren't paid. We were essentially university students going through the College of Knowledge. And I still recall I went to a job. I worked a lot Alpha. So Alpha is when it's a single unit, and I worked basically as a second person in an Alpha car with senior police officers. And I still remember this fella. We got called to a violent domestic, sort of around the lake of Tuggerah Lake. I did it at the entrance police station, and the strict instructions come over the radio. I think our call sign was like 30, Tuggerah Lake's 38 or 37 or something, and you tell them to stand off until I get there because there was a student, and we could hear this bloke destroying the house, just smashing his house to pieces. and and it was, but it was a big no for me as a student not to be there. But I was pretty reasonably fit back then and of a decent stature, so it was okay for me. I wasn't scared, and mate, I'm thinking, what are we doing? This blood anyway. This Sheila comes out covered in blood, and I still remember the officer I was working with. He said, if this bloke comes out, he gives me the baton, and he goes, I don't like swearing, but it's fuck Dennis, we're going in. And I was like, mate, let's go. Give me I was keen as. And it was a different time. And once again, this lady came out covered in claret and old mate, and he was it was dealt with accordingly and be put before the courts. But it gave me a real eye opener, and I loved it. And you did day shifts, your night shifts, but I was really lucky to get put with some old school blokes that were happy to take me along because, and I know, and there's no fault of the police today. You have to, if you do urgent duty, you must let the students step out, or I might have changed in the last couple of years, or you don't take them to those jobs, you leave them at the station. But we're fortunate, mate, I'll give it, brawls, the works. It was a wild time. Yeah.
So in a sense, Mitch, like it's a key point you touch on there. In that, like from what you were when you went through to now, like they're going to be exposed to that when they're on their job and they come. So what's their reasoning behind like pulling the students out? Like, what is their reasoning?
Yeah, look, I think it's more of a safety matter. They're not like, I think in the old days of when you were a trainee or a student police officer, you were an employee of the police force, but at this time you're actually a student of Charles Sturt University. So I'm only summarising here and a bit of an assumption, but I think it was more along your work health and safety, and you're not trained. You're not trained in defensive tactics. You're not trained in different skills. And people, fortunately for me, I'd had a bit of a background doing security work as well as while doing my apprenticeship, so I was exposed to a little bit of violence and bits and pieces that. So it wasn't new to me, but some people might be confronting for them. So I'm assuming it's that, mate. But I can't speak for the last couple of years because I've been out a couple of years now. So
and for you graduate, and did you feel ready for to take on what is a very dangerous job, which all too well? Like, did you feel ready at that young age?
Look, I felt ready to go out there and do the job. Like I wasn't worried. Like I'd been exposed to dead bodies before. I'd been exposed to, and I was a firefighter. So I'd gone to motor vehicle accidents or traumatic incidents to a far lesser degree than what police and paramedics might see as a day-to-day basis. But I had a little bit, plus with my old man, his network, his mates. So I did. But mate, it was a very, I guess you can say, like my the exposure. I didn't care what I saw, but there was still a lot of learning to do. So but look, I loved it. I couldn't wait to get out there.
So where were you first posted to, Mitch, after you graduated from Goulburn?
Yeah. So my first station was the entrance on the New South Wales Central Coast. I was basically, as I said, I lived and grew up on the Central Coast and worked and went. So I wasn't too far from home. And pretty, as I said, I was 21 or 22, I can't recall, but pretty good call for a stroke of luck that someone at my age could, blokes were getting sent from the North Coast to Sydney and I was getting sent, 20 minutes from home, like, living at home with mum and dad.
That's pretty, like I know most people go, oh, we'd love to go here, but they, they got everywhere else. But and what was it like your first day? Do you remember your first day?
Yeah, I do. It was a night shift actually. So I might have had an orientation day, or maybe that was like just getting a bit foggy now as time gets on. But my very first shift was definitely a night shift, and why I remember, there's a very good mate of mine who I'm still mates with today, unfortunately, Craig Waters, and I turned up work half an hour early, right? And this bloke walks in, and we still give him a hard time today, and he looks like Don Johnson. He's got the big guns, he's got the flat top, he's wearing the Miami Vice style, muscle shirt. And he walks in and he goes, and I said, and I'm nervous I'm not gonna lie to you, mate. I was nervous as shit then. And he comes in, he goes, "There you going?" Yeah. And I said, "Yeah, Mitch, Craig." And we introduced ourselves to each other. And And he goes, "How long you been here?" And I said, "Oh, today." He goes, "Oh, where'd you come from?" Because we weren't even in uniform yet. And I said, "No, this is my first day." And he goes, "Yeah, where were you before here?" And I said, "The academy." And he goes, "Yeah, what? You arsehole. I've had to travel from Sydney for years and you just come straight out of here, probably live at home, mum and dad." And that was my first, and I'm thinking, oh no, how's this? But as I said, real good legend of a bloke, good character. Yep. And so yeah, that was my first interaction with anyone at that station. So and we have become long-term mates with that fella, unfortunately. But yeah, worked 3 up, had a really good training officer, and I still remember and one of the other team members I worked with was he eventually ended up in the TAU and I think the AFP equivalent, and he'd not long come back from peacekeeping in Timor and stuff. So he was a really good level-headed fellow, Graham, to just learn from and listen to. And I still remember that always took his time to explain things to you. So yeah.
So for people who aren't aware, Mitch, like being a general duties, like was that minimum back then 3 years? You had to do 3 years general duties?
Yeah, essentially it was 3 years general duties, and I know it happened lesser in the city where you could go to a specialist unit in a much shorter time. But yeah, essentially, I think around that sort of time they started to bend the rules where people could go to TAG, which is what they call a target action group, so focus on a certain crime trend that's within the command area. But ideally, mate, yeah, 3 years general duties.
And for you, obviously, you had a wide exposure to a lot of things. And do you remember, like you mentioned at this, like through the podcast, that you dealt with death before and dead bodies. And do you remember your first death knock? And was there much like mentoring around from the senior guys on how to approach that?
Yes, I said my field, like FTO, field training officer I had at the time, Siobhan, really good lady, very experienced. And yeah, I remember my first deceased was it was very straightforward. A lady that just an elderly lady in her 90s simply went to bed and never woke up. So, but yeah, like over time you get exposed to further traumatic incidents, suicides, or murders and bits and pieces like that. But my first deceased as a police officer or attending as police officer was very, very straightforward.
So for you, after those 3 years, where'd you move after that? Did you specialise or?
Oh, mate, yeah, I like to often, and this will get the people revved up. I was a trail bike operative. That usually, that's stirs the mates up. We're specialists, but no, look, mate, I can't remember how long I spent. I followed actually. Yeah, it would have been. I was only at the entrance for probably. I can't recall, mate. I can't remember the training period, but my FTO had to go and they wanted my FTO to supervise some other people at Toukley Police Station. So I just followed her. Obviously didn't care, mate. I was just happy to be there. So I transferred to Toukley. Well, Toukley Police Station was still part of the command back then. So you could move between Toukley while in the entrance without any issues, or they could just move you there on the roster. So I was at Toukley for about 3 years before coming back to the entrance, I think, for another couple of years. So yeah.
And at this point too, mate, as I said, you started to, were bushfireys, and then you went down the fire rescue side, and you'd always, obviously you'd been a bushfire, so you'd had an interest, but what was it that made you want to go to fire rescue?
Essentially, I really enjoyed my role as a firefighter with the RFS. And it's a great station, great people, really, really knowledgeable. It was like a family. And I bought my first house, essentially, which was in a fire district. Well, still in RFS district, technically, but it was close to a fire station, which had, at that time, retained firefighters attached to it. So saw an advert and, applied, and, the rest is history, mate, got in.
What was it like, mate, you going through your training of, like, the hot cell for the first time? Because, obviously, you had dealt with it. Had you in the volunteers, you been exposed to that or not?
No, mate. That's very I still remember what the old blokes telling us when you get to a really thick smoke, and whether this was a car or a thick bush or a house, that you'd stick your face in your helmet and breathe in the headspace of your helmet to get the fresh air. So no, the fire brigade that I was attached to, the volunteer brigade, didn't have BA or any of that sort of stuff. It was literally I had a pair of hammer down yellows, which was overalls, and mate, you had to fight to get a set of two piece. And yeah, so and I think I'd spent by the time I went I'd spent a number of years. I was a deputy captain of my local brigade, and I felt pretty confident and in knowing what to do. And I can't remember how many years at that point, but I went and did my training. Got accepted and went and did the training with New South Wales Fire Brigades back then, and where you're doing your BA and all that sort of stuff. It was a whole new world to me, and I loved it. But yeah, it's a whole new skill set that I thought I had that I never actually knew. So yeah.
And learning, backdraft and flashover and all that, like for people, I'm talking school with you, Mitch, because I know because I'm a firer myself. So So, and what was that like? Because people don't realise there's a science behind fire. Like like when we're talking this sort of stuff, people are like, what are you talking about? And what was that like for you? Did you find it, because obviously challenging, but not as like it wasn't too bad? Like you got through the theory side of it okay?
Yeah. Look, it was really good. And once again, we had some really good instructors through that, and very knowledgeable senior instructors. This will throw a spanner in the works. The hot cell was banned at that period that I went through because of I think they used that like MDF or those sort of processed timbers.
Yep.
Or it might have even been a treated timber. And it created, like your hazardous, gases and particles. So we didn't actually have the hot cell when I went through the initial phase 1 and phase 2 training. What we did have was essentially a garden shed, and we got stitched up as you do. And I'd do this if I was instructor or directing staff. And went into it. It was really, it was hot and it was full of smoke, and you wear like obviously impeded BA masks, and we sort of knew we'd been doing it a lot, and we knew the layout by this stage, and because you had to go and simulate and rescues, do your searches and pull the dummies out. And the Croc, the old SO, he just yells out, I think we'll send him downstairs. And it was with another mate of mine who was a copper at the time as well. And we're like, downstairs, and basically they were marked out in front of everyone that everyone could see. And it was like a comedy show. So, but look, it was really, really good. A lot of fundamental basics, a lot of new techniques that I got to learn. And there's the whole world with that hazardous materials space as well. You do a little bit of basic rescue training. And then, but mate, your fundamentals of firefighting, your 5-man step ups, going into you're still doing your gas cooling, you're painting your doors to get your neutral planes, and then also, with your gas cylinders, it might be venting as well, mate. So,
how long was your training at the academy?
Yeah, so they trained back then. They had regional centres. So I went to Armidale. So from memory, it was I think you travelled up on a Wednesday, travelled home Sunday night, and they were big days. Absolute massive days. Then you went back. That was phase 1, and then you could turn out on the pump. Just only one could go on the pump. You could be the minimum crew of 4, or you could be additional. And then you went back again to do your phase 2, which was I think a Thursday travel up, travel home Sunday. But there was a lot of training and additional training at the station by your captain, your deputy, or a senior fiery. Doyleston Station was my first station, 292, and I was fortunate that was a permanent station. They had what they call a back-to-back roster, so there was permanent fireys there, 6 till 6, and I had a really good run of SOs there, and and senior fireys that were on shift, so they always welcomed me because I turned out a lot being a shift worker. I turned out a lot with the permanent fireys 2 jobs, so they always what more to learn from with some crusty old senior fireys and old SOs.
Was there the inner rivalry that like between retained and not back then, or like?
Look, it was with some people, not everyone. And it was the same. Like it was really interesting. Even that rivalry between back then, you don't see it as much these days. Well, I don't see it. The RFS, it was like the townies versus the bushies. Then it was the retained versus the permanent. And you still hear blokes and people whinging about it today. But look, I did get some backlash from some permanents, and it was pretty disgusting behaviour, to be honest with you. And I remember one particular bloke tried to stand over me. He was a big shot permanent fiery, and I was just this little old retained bloke that didn't know what the world was about. And then he found out I was in the cops, and I'd been in the cops for, I don't know, 5 years at that point. And then he wanted to be my best mate. And I thought 2 seconds ago, you would give me a hard time and essentially bullying me.
Yeah.
And I just told him to jam it. But so, yeah, that probably helped. I guess you can say that easy acceptance. But there was, mate. Yeah, definitely. But I think it all comes down to testament of the person and the character. So, look, like I'd say, 90% of the blokes and even the ladies that I've worked with in all my experience in the permanent ranks have been fantastic, regardless of who you are. It's like any industry, isn't it, Adam? You just get, it's all the big you-know-what syndrome. So.
Oh, mate, 100%. Like you always hear it with National Sparks and Wildlife, and they're not. I'm not. They're National Parks and Wildlife Services. So I'll go on record there. But mate, it is. It's that. But at the end of the day, and we get it as well, mate. And you hear some crew go, there's the townies over there, and it's like, guys, at the end of the day, we're here to do a job. Like, we're all here to do a job, and same team. Same, the outcome is we want to restore normality. So, you know it too, Mitch. Like, you see it a lot and you think, really, guys, like, we're grown adults, like, we're acting like children. Like, let's just get on with the task at hand and do the job. But for you, do you remember your first fire, and do you remember what it was like?
No, I can't tell you my first fire with the RFS.
No, I meant retained.
Oh, Fire and Rescue.
Yeah, Fire Rescue.
Yeah, fire brigades. No, look, we had a very diverse. We had a small capture of fire district. We did a lot of mutual response with the RFS. We're surrounded by Rural Fire Service district as well, so we did a lot of them. But no, I can't. Like, look, mate, got plenty of jobs. I think one of the jobs that sticks to mind was a suicide where a lady. She'd gone across the road to her neighbours and handed all these photo albums. It was a 2-story house, and it was in a rural fire district area. And so she took all the photo albums, and the neighbour, this is like midnight or thereabouts. And I thought, that's really weird. And anyway, I said, okay, no worries. And then they called the police because they were concerned about her behaviours. They thought it was unusual. So then the police turned up, and I still remember that was actually the team that I normally worked with, and I was on. So they turned up. When they arrived, the second story was fully on fire, and they're looking to what's going on. And unbeknownst to them, right in front of her, in front of the property, was her laying down on the ground, burnt to a crisp. And I was, where I lived at the station, I used to ring. We had a deputy captain that was quite close to the station. So I was one of the people who lived further away. So I would ring at a certain point and I'd say, what's the job? Because we'd call it, say what you'd call follow on. So I'd followed on, and he said to me, like, told me the address. It wasn't too far. So I was basically the first fire rescue person on scene. There was also another RFS person who I know at the time and still is a paramedic. And so it was, you felt helpless because all I had was my turnout gear with no equipment. But I was very fortunate and comfort in the knowing that this lady, it was a fatality. But I still see her. She was, her clothes were burnt, as exactly what you'd see, if you'd imagine a burnt body on a movie. But I had sort of comfort in knowing that the police were there running that cool water from the garden hose. Mate, the house was going. She was the only one there, and the paramedic was doing, even though he was there, was a fire as well, was doing what he could do to comfort her before the ambulance would get there. So, but no, we had countless structure fires, accidents, all sorts of stuff, mate. It's I can't remember.
So
the first one.
So for you, obviously working in such a close-knit environment did you ever, like, obviously you would have, mate, where the boys would have seen you from, like at work as like you were turning out for the fires, and you'd see your mates in the coppers and turn out to MVAs, or was it sort of a lot of police did that they actually joined Fire and Rescue as well, or?
Yeah, it wasn't uncommon for a police officer or a paramedic shift worker to to be a retained firefighter because it sort of fit in. It was convenient with your days off. Like back then I had a 4-on-6 off roster, and you'd have a bad roster where you had to make up your hours. But that was pretty lucky. At the station at the time, there was another police officer with me. But yeah, I knew other surrounding stations had police officers or paramedics as well that were retained firefighters.
So for you in 2008, you were part of the World Youth Day celebrations.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yep.
what was that like, mate? And how did you get picked to be part of this?
I was fortunate. I was one of the, I don't know, so many thousand police that got told to go. So World Youth Day was a really good trip away, I guess you can say. Look, I was very fortunate. We were part of Northern Region in the New South Wales Police. So police officers attached to Northern Region, so that was essentially Gosford to Tweed Heads, were entitled to accommodation in Sydney. But as you know, Central Coast to Sydney is not that far. But so we got to go down there. I was given the main precinct where the Pope was staying. Is it St Mary's Cathedral? I was only there the other day. I went past that, but. He smoked like a chimney at the time, the Pope. It was really good, mate. It was really good fun. I lucked out too with day shifts, so I didn't really have to work. Blokes had to work nights, like continuous nights or arvos, and I just worked day shifts and a few slow starts in the mornings for obvious reasons. But it was really good, and I worked with a good close mate of mine, and we always sort of managed to look busy, and we got away a little bit of mischief. So we were you had to have colours of the day, and you weren't allowed to leave these little portions, which the area was broken down into. And we managed to get our hands on different colours as well, which meant we could sneak in. And I still remember it was like a scene out of Police Academy. There was this old inspector, and he was he goes, I thought, he could just see him. I thought I knew you blokes were over there, And so we got to really spread our wings and just walk all through the precinct. And, not that we got to meet with the Pope directly, but certainly got some close-ups with him and with his team, and got to see other police that we knew. And then you had your dig pro blokes that come through, and your hazmat specialists are following them, plus all your different for the protection of him. So it was really good to see all that, how that works, and it was interesting.
So was that for you? Was there training in the lead up to that, or was there just? No,
mate, I was there. I had completed. I'm just trying to think. I'd completed this close personal protection course prior to that, but my role at GA was purely just a general duties police officer. So there was nothing special, mate.
So you mentioned, mate, that you were part of the trail bikes and specialist in trail bikes. And where were you posted around this point when you were in the trail bikes? Yeah,
I'm just trying to think. I think I think it was at Nelson Bay Station at the time. I was either Nelson Bay or Roman Terrace by this stage. And that's when I went and did the trail bike course, because in the early days, the trail bikes were primarily assigned to traffic or high patrol sections. And so unless you're in high patrol, you wouldn't get it. And I was an avid enduro rider. And so, I got on the course. I think that would have been around, I'm thinking, mate, 2010. I think I might have done the course. Yeah.
Yep. And you were in that time as well, mate. You were there was a lot of growth. Well, a lot of specialist courses, mate. You part of you did your GLR-VR.
Oh yeah.
What's that for people who don't know, Mitch?
Yeah, so in New South Wales, we have rescue arrangements governed by the State Rescue Board. Essentially, they, as I said, govern, dictate skills, training, capabilities across New South Wales in the space of rescue. So, we have a number of rescue providers in New South Wales, and that's essentially all services. As you can see, you've got your fire and rescue, your police, your ambulance. Even your Rural Fire Service have got road crash rescue units now. They've had for a couple of years in the regional areas. Your Volunteer Rescue Association, your New South Wales SES, and then you've got your Marine Rescue, which look after that sort of thing. So I was I was a rescue operator, have been and still are with Fire and Rescue New South Wales, New South Wales Fire Brigade originally. I in 2009, I won a merit-based transfer to the Port Stephens Command in the police, and with that, I bought a house with my wife, and I bought a house in the suburbs at Nelson Bay, and I transferred to Nelson Bay Fire Station, or the old Nelson Bay Fire Station has now been replaced, and that was what they call a GLR, so that's General Land Rescue. So General Land Rescue covers off on your RCR, which is Road Crash Rescue, and a number of other like industrial, heavy. Look, there's a whole range of different rescue skill sets or capabilities that require. So that's where that general land comes into it. In addition to the GLR space, we were also a vertical rescue station. So because Nelson Bay had like Yakaba and Tomaree, which a lot of very popular tourist spots, and there was at times people needed safely removed or had fallen in difficult access places right on the coastline that required vertical access.
So for that, mate, was when you did that, what was the most challenging? Was it learning the knots, or what did you find the most challenging about that?
That's it, mate. You always remember, you can't tie knot, tie lots. So yeah, look, I loved the general land rescue component, and the vertical rescue is very complex and very, very dangerous if not done correctly. The systems that a lot of our agencies use, regardless, is ideally supposed to be the same techniques regardless of who you're with. There's obviously agency-specific, I guess, roles or the way they teach things. But, the vertical rescue is exactly what you said, mate. The knots, the cordage systems, your pulley, your roping systems, your 3 to 1, 2, all about what you've got to haul, who you've got at your safety lines. Once again, the retained fire has a lot of diverse skill sets, and there was an AMBO paramedic that was skilled set in that I worked with at Nelson Bay at the time. It was very skilled across it, plus a lot of old seasoned blokes that have been doing vertical rescue for many years. So learning from them was really good. And look, the systems that we set up back then, like I haven't done vertical rescue for a number of years now, but yeah, very, very safe, and a lot of fail-safe techniques that, and I've freely put my hand up to be the simulated body in a Stokes being abseiled over a 100, 200 metre cliff, like especially off Tomaree Headland. So, yeah, but very confident that they were safe.
So for you, of some of those jobs that you've done, Mitch, do any of them stand out? One that you remember the most with your vertical stuff, or?
Vertical rescue jobs are really few and far between these days because of the capability of the aeromedical and those rescue choppers with down the wire techs. So not really so much in vertical rescue. The bugger was, it was always hard work. Like it was, someone often we'd have to get people from Tomaree, or we'd get them the rocks and bits and pieces. But it was, if we could, it was always safe to time off and walk them out as opposed to trying to haul them up. So nothing, really significant. But as I said, mate, in the general land rescue space, you'd have your people with your fingers in the drain, or locked bedrooms, or locked in car, like very simple stuff, lift rescues. I've had the odd, what we have to do, the airbags for the heavy lift, or someone trapped under a vehicle or a machinery. But like as I said, countless, road crash rescues is probably your bread and butter you do.
Yeah, and for you, in 2011, mate, you were on the move again, and you transferred to Dungog, both the police and fires as well. And what was your role down in Dungog?
Yeah, so that's right. So 2000, what was it? I say
2011. Yeah, 2011.
Yeah, so 2011, I won a transfer to Dungog Police Station. So that's what they call a lockup keeper, and you're basically, like, as mates often call me, Frank Gilroy. You're like the town policeman, in a country town, and you're still what they call general duties officer, but you do more than what you would find as a general duties officer. Some would say you do less, but you do. You really have a really wider skill set. So you become the target action group, the investigators, the warrant and summons officer, the YLO and bits and pieces like that. So that was me, mate, and I transferred across with the fireys as well.
So with that, Mitch, did you have others working with you in the police station, or was it generally you?
No, generally me. So when I just before I transferred in there, it's a two units, so two manor, but we can't use those terms these days. So it was they changed the term to 2 units, like a 1 unit or a single unit or two unit station. And the second officer was there had gone off on some long-term leave prior to my arrival with some sort of personal injury. So he it was me for pretty much the first 4 years by myself.
Yeah, right. And you mentioned that your wife, like, she's a police officer as well, mate. And how like, you obviously met in the job, and how did you guys balance the postings, and like how was that?
Yeah, the police force is very interesting when it comes to that, Adam. There's very clear cut policy on what should happen, and it sort of ends up as what they want to happen. So, I'd won the merit-based transfer and got full award costs and entitlements for the police from Tuggerah Lakes to Port Stephens, and my wife at the time was attached to Gosford or Brisbane Water Police Station. And unfortunately, the best that they could offer at the time was a transfer to Lake Macquarie Police Station, and we were living in Nelson Bay, so that was a good hour and a half one way for her. So yeah, it was difficult, mate. It was okay, pre-kids, because you could sort of work around it. And there was times when we literally didn't get to see each other because the way your shifts, your roster was opposite. But yeah, when we got kids, it got a little bit more difficult. But hey, mate, as my old sergeant used to say, because he'd always say, "Oh, you're the one that's got kids. You can't work," because he'd have people, "I can't work this weekend because I've got kids." But and it was everyone's in the same boat, mate. We just have to work around it. Yeah,
and for you, mate. So at that time, Mitch, like, you joined at a time that was like the trauma side, mate. How were you mentally from seeing both sides of police and fireys at that point? Were you still like mentally you were still okay?
Oh, look, mate. Yeah, I loved it. I loved the action. I loved I really loved it. Look, it's funny. I had another good mate of mine who's a former well-known, well-respected police rescue, and I remember him saying to me a few years ago now, he said, "Mate, just keep an eye on yourself," and I'm like, I felt invincible, mate, I got to a point where I was fine, but I started sort of managing. I could sort of say, well, I'm starting to cook myself a little bit here, because if I wasn't on call with the police, like especially at Dungog, being in both the fireys and the police and being a rescue unit, once you're always on the go doing the trail bike. So there wasn't, it was quite good. I was in the top 10 earners of overtime, but in saying that too, I was at work a lot too, which.
And for you, mate, I want to talk about. So you were awarded a commendation for bravery in the police. Can you talk to us about this?
Yeah, mate. So in 2015, I was working single unit. It was I think it was in July, August, so quite a bit sunny day. I'd actually gone down to the local tyre fitting steel dealer, and I said to him, I bought an oil cap for my chainsaw, and as much as Dungog was a crime and busy metropolis, it was, you'd often forget to turn your radio on, and it didn't really matter. And I got into the police car, and my phone was ringing for a fire call. So it's like in Fire and Rescue, it rings your phone and sets your pages off. And I thought, and which, once again, not a very busy station. And I heard a lot of chatter on the police radio. And what had happened was a farmer had fallen into his, out of his dinghy into his dam, and his wife hadn't known about it. And he was there for about half an hour. And it was, once again, like water degree. I think they said it was like 8 degrees or something, and too cold for her to go in, and she was too early anyway. And she rang 000, and it goes like police always get responded to rescue incidents in addition with a local rescue agency. And mate, I was, probably, I don't know, 8 minutes away or something like that. And I was very fortunate that I'd been pushed by I wanted to pay for my oil cap, because otherwise I'd still be there talking to the to the fella from the tyre shop now. And I said, no, I'll pay you now because we'll both forget. So that's how I happened to come across that job. So all these ducks aligned for this fella. So I raced out there. And once again, it's like a typical farmer's property. You know, they got your boundary fence, but within the boundary fence, there's 1,000 other paddocks and bits and pieces. And to get to these places, you got to go through a number of gates. And time was of the essence here. So I thought, bugger this. I made the executive decision. I just punched through his fence from the road because I thought, I'm not going to go on there. I knew the property and I knew it was a big agriculture dam. So I punched through the fence, put the old Mitsubishi Pajero through the the fence, and that was the easiest line to the to the dam. And old Bob was pretty much done. So stripped off down at my actually no, I took my shirt off. I think I might have my cargoes on because it was freezing. I left my socks on because I thought this water's going to be freezing. Dungog, middle of winter, in a dam. They're cold in summer, let alone, and it's a deep agricultural dam. So, and I swum out to him, and he was clinging to his overturned dinghy. So I said to him, "Yeah, right, mate," and he was kaput. And I said, just hang on, whatever you do, because he was a big man, and if he was going to drop, he would have went to the bottom, and it's very unlikely I would have been able to hold on to him and keep him going. So I said, whatever you do, Bob, don't go to the boat. I'll get you out of here. So I started sort of like, I guess like a side stroke pulling the dinghy, and I noticed that I started the boat, and I started like a pendulum. And what had happened is the anchor in the boat had fallen and got hooked on the foot valve of the dam where the pump was drawing the water from, so I couldn't go any further. And I thought, I've got to get him out of here because he's not well. And he kept putting his head underwater like he was done.
Yep.
And I'd pull his head back up and try and rest it on the boat. And I thought, how do I get him out of here? And I thought, do I swim back and get my Leatherman and come back and cut the rope? So in the end, I thought, no, if I do that, he's gone. So in the end, I just reef the rope, swim, reef, swim, and just kept doing that systematically. And till I got to the edge, and I couldn't tell you how far. I think it was about 30 or 40 meters, maybe. I can't recall, maybe longer. And and at that time he'd ingested dam water. A few times, as I said, I had to lift his head out of the water. And it was freezing and got him out. And just at that time, the paramedics, the local ambos had arrived, and also they started working on him, got him out. He vomited. He was really, really crook. And the old Westpac rescue helicopter had also flown in and landed on the dam wall. So he had. It was lucky that I was there. Lucky that the ambulance were in town and the Westpac rescue helicopter. So he had the best treatment you could get at that given time.
And for you, mate, I'm like, you would have been gassed and very cold by when you got out, and no, mate, just quick thinking, no time for backup, like just get in, get it done, and like for you, obviously, like for you looking back now, like, do you think, holy shit, I just like it was just a split second decision for you to jump in and save him?
Yeah, look, because I knew the rescue agency was on their way, but they didn't have anything that would be able to provide any assistance, in terms of flotation device, PFDs, an Archangel or whatever. There was nothing there. So I had to do that. But look, in saying what I did is what any other normal bloke or lady would do, if that makes sense. So like I've copped a lot of banter. I still cop a lot of banter. From mates, it was only knee deep. You had your floaties on. I heard you went out and and then you held him. And like all all that sort of banter from workmates. But essentially, it's something that any of us would have done. That if you felt capable to do, it was dead set, just freezing cold, mate. Yeah.
So for that, mate, obviously you had to write your reports, and obviously like the boys give you shit about it, and I'm not gonna give you shit. But how did you get nominated for your, like, how did that come about? Yeah, look,
I found out later down the track that my sergeant had nominated me through the award honours and awards system is a very complex system, and it can at times, although it shouldn't, be based on people's opinions. But I was very fortunate that the sergeant that I had, nominated me for and unbeknownst to me at the time, he'd gone out, he'd taken photos of the dam, he had seen, got statements from the lady and the victim and the husband and whoever else. I think maybe the ambos. I'm not too sure because I wasn't familiar with it at the time. And then he compiles that report and submits it through the chain of command. So to receive, I received a couple of different awards for that one job, and it was very, very, very rewarding to hear something because that wasn't in your mind, but it is what it is, and And
I think too, mate, it's recognition for, and sometimes, yourself as a police officer, it sometimes can be very, you don't feel like it's rewarding and fulfilling, and it's nice to actually receive that. And then also, mate, that you were also awarded through Fire and Rescue. You were awarded the commendation for courageous actions. Can you talk to us about this?
Yeah, another water job. So same year. It was, when was that? Actually, it might have been, I can't recall. So it was similar time. Might have been after that or before that. Anyway, so we in April 2015, significant weather events occurred in the Hunter, more over Stroud and Dungog. And they had a really intense, what they called from the Corona inquest, a cloudburst. So what had happened was it had been just raining all night. Nothing really, a lot of rain, but nothing that was of any significance to the locals there, because we had the Dungog's based on the Williams River, and Stroud is essentially circled by Mill Creek and the Kirill River. So it was about 4:10 in the morning. The pages went off, and we went to the station, and it was the initial job come in as people trapped on their roof, people trapped in their houses and floodwaters on their roof. And I knew the location, and being working there for a number of years, you get to know the places, the houses, the properties of people, and I'm like, holy crap, that doesn't make sense. That shouldn't be like that. So we left the town of Dungog and in the fire truck, and I sent a message out to the people in the station just because this is really unusual, and it prompted one of the other fellas who was just finished, one of the deputy captains who was on leave, to actually come in or just finish his leave. And fortunately, we had this really old tanker, mate, with the gold and red lettering and light checkers on it, and which we used for remote area stuff in Dungog. So, mate, we headed on down to Stroud, and at the time Dungog was essentially dry. It was wet, but there was wasn't a blip in anything. When we get down there, I'm looking at this really immense flood waters from the northern end of town, the Gloucester side of Stroud, and there was like a bloke had flooded his Commodore Ute trying to drive through, but it was really unusual, and it was Mill Creek, and Stroud had suffered essentially a cloudburst, a huge dump of intense rainfall in a very short period of time. The actual address we couldn't get to purely due to floodwaters, but what we had identified, there was, I think it was 3 houses on the northern side of Mill Creek. Northern side of Mill Creek of Stroud. There was people in their houses, and they would literally had water running through their lounge rooms like it was a river. And this is where it comes to. Everyone wants all the flashes, and you'd see this in your line of work, mate, with the Royal Fire Service. Everyone wants the flashes, fire truck, and all the modern technology. But we had this old. It was the second oldest vehicle in the fleet, and but the beauty of that is it was an old school tanker, very high clearance, high air intake, and you could drive it anywhere like a submarine.
Raise your glasses, podcasters. This episode of True Blue Conversations is brought to you by Wet Canteen Bottling Company, the perfect way to commemorate and celebrate life's most special occasions. Elevate your moments, savour the taste, and make them truly unforgettable with Wet Canteen. Head on over to wetcanteenbottlingco.com.au and use the code TRUEBLUE for your exclusive discount. Now, on with the show.
And it's not going to suck water or die of electrical fault. So had a discussion with the crew. The 4 of us decided there was people literally yelling for help in their houses. and the driver was Robbo was a local like Country Energy fella, Central Energy, so he was very familiar with the area as well. So he was basically drive-by braille. We didn't know where the driveways were. There was big culverts, but he sort of, from his own sort of memory, drove where he thought best the driveway entry was. And we drove into the first property. I can't remember which sequence it was, and there was people. There was a family in their first house, and it was too deep. It was literally too deep because the houses were already elevated because of the potential flood. Not elevated high, but it was probably end up jumping in the fast flowing water, and it was probably up to, I say, chest height, I guess you could say, but it was ripping through their house. And we set up a ladder from the veranda to the truck to walk the people across, but we couldn't get there. So another bloke, Evo, and I had to jump in while the other two, Robbo and Andrew, had to sort of secure that ladder. And poor old Evo I remember he was literally got washed away, and I grabbed him like you grab a cat by the back of the neck and just hung onto him. And we linked arms like you do on some sort of country and western dance. And we managed to work our way to the house. And then I still remember the kids sitting on top of their bed that was floating. And we said, look, just get what you can. They had cats or dogs in like little cages, and they basically just got out with the pajamas they had, and we just walked them into the cab of the truck through the ladder, and put the animals in the back and worked our way back out. And we dumped them off at like a bit of a staging area, and then we went back into the next house and did the same thing for another group of people. So yeah, it was pretty intense, and probably at the time, which they've certainly changed the ways now, Fire and Rescue, which is a really good thing. But at the time, the flood rescue capability and skill set was purely restricted to permanent firefighters. And even though retained firefighters may live in an area of risk and potential, it wasn't open to you to use that. So yeah, we later did. We were the first station to do a land-based flood rescue, and after doing that course, we would have been a beautiful candidate of what not to do, but we did it anyway. And so from that job, we were nominated by, I believe it was from I'm assuming the zone commander of our zone, and went through the chain, and we received the Fire and Rescue individual commissioners commendation for courageous action, and also the Royal Humane silver medal for bravery, the four of us. And we also got a Save a Life Award. I think it was for that, a Save a Life Award from St John Ambulance as well, Australia.
So can you talk us a little bit about the
Royal Humane?
Yeah, the Royal Humane, yeah.
Yeah, so since that, I was aware the Royal Humane Society it was formulated in 1877 and it was called the Royal Shipwreck Relief Society or something, and it was really basically back in those days a lot of shipwrecks, and it started from a shipwreck at Newcastle, so looking after widows and orphans of the merchant seamen and people that worked on the boats back in the days that had died, but also in the same had performed brave acts to rescue people and may have become succumb to injuries as a result. So the Royal Humane Society has been recognising brave acts of members of any. It doesn't have to be of a service; could be any member of the community, and it's across all Commonwealth nations. So still sits today. Very, very fortunate that a couple of years ago I reached out to provide some sort of assistance, and in the process I've been working with them in the background for a couple of years now. And we just had an investiture a couple of weeks ago down in Government House with the Royal Humane Society, where they recognised 43 Australians with a mix of members of the community, police officers, rural fire service operators, and yeah.
So does that run in with that, Mitch? Does that run side by side with the honours and awards of, like, is it similar to that, or
So look, from what I've gathered, I've been very fortunate to receive a number of awards for my work. And from what I understand is, so we'll use the police for an example. So a police officer does good work, or a member of community, or even could be another service. Usually, like I said, like the the person would do a report as to the actions of that individual or group of persons. That would then get sent through their chain of command and usually held at what they call the local honours and awards committee. So that could be a command base or district base. And then depending on the actions and level, because obviously there's all varying levels of heroic acts and different actions of people, it gets escalated to region and state levels. So like any agency, Fire and Rescue is probably the same. They have their local or state committees, and then the state committee's made up, and they've got certain guidelines that they meet, and they think, well, then they refer to the Australian Honours and Awards Committee, which is in Canberra, or the Royal Humane, Royal Life Saving Society, St John Ambulance. They obviously recognise the people for saving lives of others. So yeah, that's how they work, and there is reference to like double dipping of awards and bits and pieces like that, but those other agencies are very proud and of what members of the community have done, regardless if you have a service or not, and they want to recognise them just as much as the own agency. So that's how that kind of comes about.
And I guess for you, mate, like as you say, you don't do it for awards, but it's great recognition of what you've done in service, and for you, you'd be one of very few, mate, that have got commendation for bravery for both fire rescue and police. Like there wouldn't be too many that have got both those awards.
No, the fire rescue commendation for courageous action. I think I've spoken to a fellow that sort of really researches and is aware of them. I think there's about 40 or 50 permanent firefighters that have ever received it, and probably I think about now there might be up to about 18 retained firefighters. So it's quite rare. And yeah, you're right. I've received the Police Commissioner's Commendation for Courage as well. So it's the police equivalent. So yeah, probably I would like to say probably the only one that's got that. But down in Government House just recently, the investiture, I come across a former police officer who's received the Police Valour Award, which is the highest award you can get as a police officer. But he's also received the same award that I've got from Commissioner Mullins back in the early 2000s for rescuing people from a house fire. And he's a policeman, but the fire commissioner decided his actions were so brave he'd award him the same medal. So yeah, he's very, very rare thing, and it's very it's very proud to have those awards, and it's something that that will go onto my kids when I move on.
Absolutely, and I think, mate, it's thank you for your service for both, mate, and it's, as you say, it's back when we started, mate, that it comes from your dad and obviously you've got a rich family history of service and giving back, and mate, no, thank you from every Australian. Thank you very much for what you've done in your service.
Oh, look, thanks, mate. But we can't not forget that there's a lot of good deeds that do go unnoticed by members of all our services and even members of the community. So there's always varying different views of different things of why people shouldn't have a God. But I love seeing, even now that I'm sort of, you see fellow police mates on the news getting awards or something, and I have great pleasure in ringing them up and firstly congratulating them for what they did, but also, we can't let them go without taking the piss either. But yeah, you need to really acknowledge it, because people get awards, mate, for different things, and you can't just walk up to the metal shop and buy these different coloured medals because they look pretty or on eBay. Well, I guess you can, but you'll end up on some website. But
you get called out, yeah,
and you can't go and write yourself up for an award, much to people's disgust. But it's still got to go through an honours awards committee. So it's a bunch of people that have, your actions have got to be verified. So there's a lot of people out there that have done a lot of good things that haven't been noticed, but there's a lot of good people that have, and they should be very proud of what they've achieved and been awarded.
Absolutely, and I know, mate, you wear them very proudly on. I know I've seen you, mate, on Police Remembrance Day, and you've worn your medals proudly, and so you should, mate. So you should, and I think Mate, you know yourself, yeah, we do take, being first responders, mate, we do take the piss of each other, and and military do as well.
Yep,
But at the
definitely.
end of the day, mate, you wear them for all your mates and your colleagues as well that do sometimes get unnoticed.
Yeah, yeah. Like I've got a good close friend of mine who's he's the recipient of the Police Commissioner's Commendation twice. He's got the Royal Humane Silver and Bronze Medal with the Galligan Award, which is the Bravest Act of the Year. And he was awarded a Fire and Rescue Meritorious Award. And he's like, like it didn't seem like he met the criteria in his own view. And I said, mate, you did what you did. Like, just remember you have earned this. And often you hear the term, I'll take it for the ones that I didn't get it. But no, mate, the awards don't come lightly for anything. But yeah, and that's what the new role will be with the Royal Humane Society, is working across the state, is identifying and ensuring people that we see on the news or members of the community that have done very brave deeds that are recognised and not just forgotten about because the media has moved on.
And for you, is that recently, that's something that's just come up for you in
Yeah. Yeah, so in the process at the moment with the council, like I said, I've been assisting one of the secretary of the society with his roles, and but that's looking moving forward. I guess by the time this goes out, it'll be sort of in full swing. But yeah, mate, yeah, definitely, and having a network of people that can identify and work with people and work with your local honours and awards committees to ensure that people get recognised for their actions.
Absolutely. No, it's important work, mate. And I'm glad, mate, that you're taking up that cause, mate. And it's I know it's a cause close to your heart. And for you, so we move forward, mate, in 2020, after 17 years, you decided to call time on your police career. Was it a hard choice to walk away from a job that you loved?
Yeah, very, very hard, Adam. Very, very proud of being a police officer. Like, it's a very challenging career. It's a very rewarding career. You do come away unbeknownst, a lot of scars beneath the surface that you don't know about at the time. But I come to a point in my life where it was definitely time to move on in terms of career progression. I loved my job at the local town, at the station I worked at. I loved my job with the fireys. But we're in a standstill actually with the police. The police had sort of finished up there. I hadn't had any interest in promoting. So I was just at the time sitting there. I'd loved it. And I made the decision, but at the time they'd stopped the promotion process and introducing a new promotion process, which they have now. But in the same time, I've always had this passion for emergency management. I loved rescue. For me to go into police rescue was a move to Sydney and try and jag a spot in there, or into Newcastle. You'd have to move into part-time. Worked a lot, did a lot of training, led a lot of training days and involved a lot of training days in the remote area rescue and canyoning stuff in the Williams with the Newcastle Police Rescue, the ambulance scat, the soddies and the like. So that really wasn't on the cards. For me, that was more of a backwards move from the role I'd had to go in there to try and win a spot and then eventually get a part-time. So I really love that EM sector. Looked at emergency management roles within New South Wales Police as well. They have an EMU, they call it. Once again, moved to Sydney wasn't going to be on the cards just wasn't going to work for the family. And I sort of started perusing, the I work for New South Wales and, public sector advertisements, and I saw a role for the New South Wales State Emergency Service, and it was based in Tamworth or Gunnedah. So that interested me. I made some inquiries. I had a number of conditions. It had to be state government. That was my dad always swore. 40 odd years in the Ambos. He had a pretty good super, pretty good sick leave and leave balance, and a paycheck every fortnight. So I had to stay state government. It was something that I had interest in, and so long story short, went through the application process and I was offered the position. Well, okay, so that was a big decision then, because as you know, a lot of people, not many people, probably changed a bit now, but at the time, people only left the police for either retirement or medically or some sort of physical injury. So I was one of the very few to leave for another job. So mate, I was successful in obtaining a role, a senior leadership role with the New South Wales State Emergency Service based in Tamworth for the New England Northwest.
And I guess, mate, at that point too, you would have faced a lot of stick from your mates of leaving the police, wouldn't you? Like then,
Oh yeah,
yeah, and
yeah,
they
yep,
would have given you a lot of shit for Mitch. What are you doing? And
yep,
yeah, and
yep.
for you at that point, mate, was that a did you like obviously you got like and the big thing is and what I take away from most veteran podcasts or any other first responder is Mitch that you got to have a plan. You got to have something to go to
Yes,
and because
very true.
otherwise you sort of you lose your sense of identity. But for you, did you feel that you'd lost that or you just moved into the like as you say you moved into the SES?
Yeah, look, yeah, you're right. I did get a lot of stick from mates, and I'll put this on public notice right now that they're all the people ringing me up, harassing me to get them a job. I had one ring me just before we started this interview. Yeah. But no, mate. Look, I did cop a lot of stick. Mate, I was very hesitant of calling my sergeant, who was on his way out at that stage because he was a very long-serving, proud policeman, and he and I thought, oh no, he was policeman through and through, and he's going to rip me a new one. But he said, he goes, mate, that is you to a T. I'm very, very proud of you. Good on you. You will kill it. My inspector, who's since passed away, Tony Townsend, he was my referee for the job. He was very, very supportive, and yeah, they backed me the whole way. Yeah, look, I've copped some flack for a lot of people. I did notice, and it's I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There is that perception, probably in the lower ranks of various agencies, upon other agencies, and I'm better than you because I might be X, Y, and Z. But at the end of the day, mate, my rank was a superintendent with the New South Wales State Emergency Service. I looked after an area which covered 105,000 square kilometres. I think it was 30 volunteer units or stations with about 500 odd volunteers on the book. So it was a big job. A lot of my stakeholders, it was very fortunate that especially out here in the West, everyone really gets along and plays well across all agencies. And one of the superintendents used to be my old sergeant, believe it or not, for the police. And so we had a long, good history with that. So it was really interesting because we'd lost touch over a few years. And when I sent my introductory email, he said, "Is this the same Mitch Parker from Toukley?" Like I said, "Yeah." And yeah, we get along really well. It was so, yeah, mate. Ended up doing that role for the next 2.5 years.
And mate, I must say, then we went through COVID, and then it rained, and it didn't stop, mate, and it just kept raining and raining and
It
raining.
did.
And what were some of the challenges, mate, that you faced and you sort of had to overcome during those floods?
Yeah, so it's interesting you say that because I moved to Dungog, and a few years later, Dungog had its worst ever flood. Yeah, where 3 people lost their lives. I moved to Tamworth at the time for this new role, and it was in drought. And then literally 6 months later, we have back-to-back nearly historic floods right across the New England Northwest. So look, the New South Wales SES has really improved its structure now in terms of the staff workforce. Where it was just me for the entire area, and I reported to my boss at Dubbo. There's now, I think, 30 staff in the same area, so which you can really service and look after the volunteer workforce that needs to be seen and really get into what you need to do. But yeah, as you said, mate, we were operational at one point. Now I think it was 18 months across Western Zone of New South Wales, like continuous flooding, and we know that it's really interesting. People on the coast, the flooding will hit if it hits the range or east. It flows straight out of the ocean. Job's done in a couple of days. Western floods will run for months, and
Yep.
it flows uphill. Essentially, like you'll get the water that you see, and I'll use Tamworth for example, like your Chaffey Dam or your Coburn rivers. That water ends up through Menindee in the Murray River. In the bottom corner of New South Wales. You would never think that in a million years. And it flows up, or you've got the McIntyre rivers or your Guada rivers that flow up pretty much to the Queensland border and travel across to your, above your down Mungadai, Collarenebri, out to Walgett, and then out your Berks, your Breeze, like it just keeps going. So yeah, mate, we were operational for a long time, very, very challenging time, but it was a real testament to the true Australian spirit of communities and other people coming in to give it a go and chip
I
in for sure.
I know, mate, because I was deployed. It was actually this time last year. I was actually deployed down in Deniliquin, and
Oh yeah, yep.
we were Deniliquin, we were Swan Hill, we were all around there, mate. And all I remember is, yeah, basically you were right. It's 18 months of just following water, like it was just yeah, and unbelievable, mate. And so, like some of those communities, mate, like your heart broke for them because they'd lost livestock, they like lost everything, and mate, it was a really challenging time for me as well because I'd never dealt with floods before, and it was
Mm.
18 months of pushing sewer and shit and slime and ripping gyprock off walls, and it was tough, mate. It was a really, really hard time, and I know for you, mate, like people don't know this, but there's not as many SES volunteers as there are, RFS or other agencies, and we just all seemed to come together, and it was,
Yeah.
we worked really well alongside, and I'll give you a bit of stick here, Mitch, and the storm carrots. So,
I've been called worse.
oh, no, but that's the
Yeah,
storm carrots. So, but
yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah.
mate, it was a challenge, and for you. I guess for you in that sense, mate, a really good experience for emergency management and for you to, put those skills to use.
Mate, it was, and yeah, and I'm not going to lie. And anyone that's left the police force for another job in particular, or even with going out with an injury of some sort, you go through that identity issue. You go through that. Have I made the right decision? Because being in and it's no different than probably a full-time firefighter, even a paramedic. It's an identity, and it's something you are proud. Even though police officers like to hide their identity, they're also very, very proud of their identity. And it was, mate. It was a real eye opener for me um, because in Tamworth, that's where all your media outlets are, your Prime, your Channel 9, your ABC, and a lot of the junior reporters start there fresh out of school or whether it's their first sort of reporting gig. So they're very keen and proactive. And then when you've got a lot of activity like that and a lot of impact on regional communities, mate, you're literally in and out of briefings, as you touched on, Adam. It's a massive multi-agency approach. It's not just the SES with a couple of people. It is, without the services of the Rural Fire Service in particular and the Fire and Rescue, the VRA. Mate, we had surf rescue guys at Moree, marine rescue, parked. You got people like your people you see, on the coast of Newcastle, which literally out at Moree with their boats, providing lending assistance. It was everyone dug in and had a go, and then mate, you're doing, you're coordinating that response right across a 105,000 square kilometre footprint, and at the same time you've got to feed the information to the community. So you've got the journos knocking on the door, and mate, I'd gone for many days where I was just doing presses every day, even to the point when I might get a day from home, they'd come to my home and I'd do a TV interview from home in my the old newsreader outfit, the shirt and hat and tie up top, and the boardies and thongs on below. And yeah, plenty of times that you made, especially in mainstream media, because places like your Morees, your Narrabris, your Weewas, your Gunnedas, they were put on the map big time, multiple times, and so they got a lot of coverage. And and I copped a lot of memes and other things from different mates taking photos of you on the telly. But hey, that's what, if your mates aren't putting shit on you, then you're doing something wrong. So
No, that's right. And mate, good point you touch on too is the inner agencies and also the interstate agencies. Like
yes, of course,
we were like we had we had QFest, we had guys from Western Australia come over and we were working alongside them, and they were like we're here to help you, and it was it was great. It was really good to see the inner agencies working together because, as you say, we mentioned at the start of the podcast the inner rivalries of all different agencies, but it was mate, it was like you saw it in the 2019-2020 bushfires, mate, of the work of all the inner agencies working together, and then it just seemed to go fire, flood, COVID, flood. Then it was just
exactly, mate. And you're really right there. and I've made such good networks and friendships and professional relationships with all your services, and like you get every service and your councils, your community leaders, your Indigenous leaders, your local, your state politicians, even federal, across border. Because a lot of my portion I looked after, if you can imagine, field west to I was my area of responsibility, and it's still there in my current role. And I established really strong relationships with EM practitioners in both police, QFES on the other side of the border, and no doubt that we're a mutual sort of colleague friend of ours. I had to decipher because you had to do the approvals for your helicopter rides, and we had a number of aviation assets. And I had this pest who's now a station officer up in the far north Queensland. You probably know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do. Yep.
Yeah. and I got someone coming to my office and they're going, "Oh, I've got this fiery person. He wants a helicopter ride in his crew, and I don't think he needs it." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's just hear him out." And person is very, very experienced, and I think it's like us, mate. The excitement of driving the fire truck's well and truly worn off, and so that aeromedical, and he had a really genuine job to do. But mate, that from that particular that engagement, and we continue to work together because he was like a team leader for that top end. I'm talking about your Boggabillers, your Gundawindi, Toomla patch of New South Wales, Queensland. And we still chat to this day, and send a lot of slinging each way. So you do, mate. It's really, really good, and I'm really thankful for all those relationships.
Absolutely, mate. And for you did that role, and recently you've moved on from that role, and what are you doing now, mate?
Yeah, so I'm now working. So at the end of 2000, what are we now? 20. Yeah, so end of 2022, we had. Most people would know the agency Resilience New South Wales was formulated by the Berejiklian government, and it was really heavily identified that New South Wales were very strong in their response phase, preparedness and response phase for responding to emergencies. And it's the same old story as people, you might be seeing these kids floating in a river and you keep rescuing them, but people need to go and find who's throwing them in, so, and that's what the resilience was formed. It was sort of about to get in there and look after that recovery coordination and really help those communities and be an advocate for those communities during disaster, in addition to your response agencies. Somewhere along the line, there was a little bit of political involvement, and that agency was disbanded at the end of 2022, and the formation of the New South Wales Reconstruction Authority was formed 16th of December. And along with that came legislation, which provided a number of powers and roles and different things they can and cannot do, and powers to direct, all about planning, preparedness, mitigation, adaptation, and recovery coordination pre and post disaster. And that was Queensland had been running the Queensland Reconstruction Authority for a number of years, which is a very similar model to which New South Wales developed. And fortunately, I was offered a senior role with them, and which I started with at the beginning of this year, mate. Still living here in Tamworth, looking after that space, and mate, within a couple of months into the role, several months in the role, Tenterfield had a repeat of 1920 again. So, which we're still working with the community for now in terms of recovery coordination.
So is that, and do you guys work alongside Mitch? Is it Disaster Relief Australia? Do you guys work with them, or is it?
Yeah, so the way it works, the recovery arrangements in New South Wales, it's still an evolving process, but as a Reconstruction Authority Act regulations were introduced along with the authority itself. Local, generally sat with the local council, and that's a huge task in itself for any council, and comes with a great expense. So we have been developing work with your local councils and your local communities to best equip them and prepare them for pre-disaster, and sit up with the agencies. So like the RFS, your community engagement, your community risk teams, and also your planning and engineering teams with councils, to try and best prepare those communities, whether it's or whatever it is. There's all different specialist people in that planning sector. But then also in the recovery coordination piece, so bringing everyone together come post a disaster, when they've got issues with, identity documents, there's Service New South Wales, there's your insurance councils, your mental health support. People do suffer from traumatic incidents, and loss of their property and livestock and so forth. You've got effects with pasture, fencing. So there's a whole heap of stuff that often went unnoticed historically with it, because we were very good at sending all the fire trucks in or the SES or whatever. And I saw this in Dungog. And then once all the jobs had finished, everyone left, and it was left to the locals to clean up. So that's what it's. If it's a bit of a round figure of what we're about. But yeah, it's a really, really good concept moving forward for the communities.
So for you, mate, and with everything, knowing what you've know now and what you've been through and experienced through your life, what advice, mate, would you give your 18-year-old self, and would he listen?
Well, not doing that well at school didn't really matter. Look, the biggest thing I take away from Adam is to, like I say, persevere. Yeah, there will be a number of knockbacks. You will be frustrated, and also to be like kind to people. Everyone has their own dramas. You might not like someone, but as people say, Adolf Hitler had mates, so everyone's got mates. Just try and be that sort of happy medium. Work with people, try and understand where they're coming from, but persevere is the biggest thing that I've made. Yeah, we will all get knocks. You hear, like you say, I got set back a couple of years in the cops, persevered, got in. You hear the same when you hear different stories with people in defence, your special forces operators. They do their selection time and time again. It's the same with that sort of stuff in the New South Wales Police as well. So mate, it's that perseverance and I think and kindness to other people is really, really important.
I think, mate, that's great advice, and like I guess for any young person that listens to this, mate, is you're right, persevere, and these days, the new millennials or whatever they are, mate, they seem to get a bit of a knockback, and they don't persevere. Like they just go, it's too hard, and they want to be the CEO at 20, and it's like, hey, hang on, champ, crawl before you walk, and I think, mate, that's great advice. That if you do get overcome the adversity, mate, sometimes like you could have had that, mate, where you went, we'll stuff that. I've got to wait. I'm not going to get in the police. But you did. You persevered, mate. And for you, looking back now, Mitch, was joining the police still the best decision of your life that you can, apart from marrying your wife and having your kids?
Thanks, Adam. You just saved me on that one. Look, in addition to family, mate, and that definitely, look, I am proud. I am proud of my time as a police. Like I left, it was my decision to leave the police for another job. Would I change my decision? Absolutely not. Do I miss the police some days? Absolutely. I'm very fortunate that I'm still a firefighter. I still get to do that. I'm still a rescue operator. A bit, not as much as I'd like to, because I'm very heavily involved in my normal job. But yeah, mate, I wouldn't change anything for the world. And I think every piece of adversity that you come across, right from the very beginning to what you still see now, is all learnings as part of your journey. And it probably sounds a bit hipperish, maybe, I don't know, mate, but it is, and it's really, really important. And you touched on there that if you want to be the CEO when you're 20 years of age, I guess you can be the CEO of your own company. That's not a problem, but it's really, really important. And I've seen people really want to jump very, very quickly, and I think it's very important to know your craft at your level, because you're going to have gaps. And when you become a tradesperson, whether you're a sparky, chippy, fitter, whatever you may be, you have to do the years on the tools alongside your study. So you could be the smartest kid in the workshop and think you got your trade after a year, but there's things that you're not going to know if you skip those other 3 years of your trade. So that's really, really important in any place you work.
Absolutely. No, great advice, mate. And mate, for you, someone who has transitioned and taken that step out of police, mate, what advice do you give to your fellow brothers and sisters in blue to when they transition out?
Look, they're very, very fortunate. There's a lot of services that are coming out now. There's a lot of people, mate, in the social space, out there now, and we know a lot of them. And don't be scared to make you to decide your journey. Yeah, it is very, very difficult times. I have had a lot of phone calls from different people in the police. I've had reach outs on social media of people that have been recommended by other people that I know, just to say, hey, this is what I've done, or this is what I'm thinking of. So, mate, yeah, just do it. Yeah, and set your know your worth as well, mate. That's really, really important. And yeah, look, like as I said, like I did it. It was a tough time. I'm not going to lie. It was a very, very mixed emotions. But yeah, mate, I would not change anything I've done thus far. Obviously, there's some things that you've done in the past with people or colleagues that you've had disagreements with. But apart from that, in terms of the journey, mate, it's all part of what makes us who we are as we grow older.
Absolutely. And mate, what advice would you give, Mitch, to any young person that is looking to join the police and because it's a different time now to when you joined, and social media now, and it's a challenging job, it's rewarding, but what advice would you give to any young person that is looking at going into the police?
Yeah, look, mate, I would say do it. There's probably a lot of people be throwing eggs at me right now because they're not very happy. But look, mate, I loved it. And it's, having an old bloke say to me, this is 2004, and he'd been in the cop since the 70s. And he said to me, you know what, Mitch, that scares me. I said, what's that? He goes, these are your good old days. And you know what? They were my good old days, but they were his bad days. But they were my good old days, and I loved them. I thought they were unreal where he hated them because his old days were in the 70s and 80s. Different eras, different society, different. And so if people start now, this is their good old days. And in 20 years' time, they're going to be kicking stones like some other people. So, mate, I reckon do it and keep really listen, learn, take the opportunity to listen, learn from your peers, put your hand up for any course. I used to get harassed for, people say, I did a lot of courses in the police. But it's all skill sets that you could use for your day-to-day job and later on in life, mate. So, yeah, mate, I highly recommend it.
Well, I think, mate, it's great advice that and great point you touch on there is because, say yes to every course because you never know, that course might lead to something back in civilian world or, so great advice, mate. And do those courses that you think, oh, well, where's this going to lead to? You never know, mate. And do the job. I was always taught, mate, and I'm sure you were too, even if it's a shitty job, do it because you never know who's watching and it might lead to an opportunity.
Yeah, that's exactly right, mate. You never know who people are or who people are connected to. And that's in all walks of life. And I had this discussion with my mentor the other day, that exact, using some different scenarios about it. But yeah, look, I can, when you talk about, in my early days, I had an opportunity to do a forensic procedure accreditation. So basically made me an authorised officer to do for forensic procedures, just your buccal swabs and so forth with the police. And it was very rare back then. This would have been I was a probationary, so it would have been 04, 05. And I had this sergeant come out and he said, oh, Mitch, I need you to do a forensic procedure for me. And I go, oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to do them, Sarge. And he goes, you're on the list. Yes, you are. And I'm like, oh, crap, because it's a muggle of a job. It's so cumbersome. But yeah, you're right, mate. And I was, yep, no worries, Sarge. And off I did and went because he wasn't trained. But and sometimes you think, oh, what did I do that for? But, mate, once again, it wouldn't change anything for the world. And you will take bits and pieces of your learning of everything you do and the interactions you have and your leaders that you see, and you'll say, oh, we'll do that or I won't do that. And you become who you are and hopefully the best person you can be for your colleagues and people you work with.
Absolutely. And for you, mate, I wanted to get you on because yours is a story of just absolute, mate, what you've done and like looking back in both service, to fire rescue and also police. But mate, what what advice can you give to your brothers and sisters who might be struggling and, or anyone who's struggling, mate, to, what advice can you give to them to maybe reach out, or like for you personally, what have you found that's helped you?
Look, I think you've got to invest in those that invest in you, Adam. It's really important. And it doesn't matter who you are or what they are or, a social status. It's invest in those, invest in you is very important. And you soon learn who those people are as time gets on in life. Look, there's a lot of people out there. We know the different people, from people we know in other podcasts and that are out there that are always there for a chat. And I said, I've had people reach out to me, and just reach out to someone because there's someone there to listen and someone gives the time of day. And mate, I've gone my whole life in the police of trying to conceal my identity or social media or my phone number and stuff. And now, mate, and that's out there all over the place. So anyone, and there's going to be someone that might listen to this that is in that same mindset. They think, well, I need to do something else, or I need someone to talk to, because there's always been this fear, and it's much better now than what it used to be. If you were, in the fireys or the police or whatever, if you put your hand up to say, look, I just need a bit of help, where there was that early intervention. If you put your hand up now, it's accepted, whereas it wasn't many years ago. And you put your hand up, bang, you're throwing the wood heap. You're like a scrapped engine. Next. So, mate, reach out. There's always someone that'll listen. And if you get the idea that someone aren't, mate, you'll find someone. But there's plenty of us out there. And, mate, I'm always here for anyone that needs it.
Mate, it's absolutely, and I know, mate, I bang on every single podcast I ever do, mate, is that, mate, I've just written a book on my struggles and my suicide attempt, and mate, I say it all the time that if I didn't speak up when I did, mate, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't be paying forward my life lessons that I've learned. And it is, mate, it's not weak to speak. So guys and girls out there who are struggling, put your hand up and say, I'm struggling, and it's too big of a, it's too big. It's got too big for me to handle now. I need some help. And, mate, there's nothing, like my psychologist said it. He goes, Adam, it's not weak to speak. It's actually a sign of strength. And that's,
it is very much so.
I'm forever banging that down the podcast, mate, that, speak up. If you're not well, just reach out, or, mate, yourself, pick up the phone and just give them a call and say, hey, how you traveling? You okay? Like, do you when we can catch up for a coffee, or so, very important, mate. Very, very important to, podcasts like this, mate. This is why I started the podcast, Mitch, was to help people that are, they may just listen to this and hear your story and go, you know what? I am looking at transitioning, or, how did Mitch go about that transition? Like you say, always have a backup, have that plan B, because, as you know, mate, you're not always, it's very rare that you're going to have a career that's going to go 40 years in the police. You just, some are lucky that they can do that. Others, you need to have a plan B.
Mate, you do. It's very, very important. And your mates will know too. And I reflect over the years of different stresses I may have had, and you don't know it or identify it, but your mates do, and listen to them. But as I said, don't be scared to talk up, mate. And I said, and I really value. And there's mates that I've made that I didn't even know in the police are either still in or out, and form very, very good bond, very, very good relationships, just very strong bonds. And I really, enjoy, your circle gets a little bit smaller than what you had. But in saying that, mate, I'm really fortunate of the friends that I have around me today, and they've all got varying careers, whether it's defence, policing, your parent, like your 000 services, or just purely enterprise, and private business. But mate, it is a very, very nerving. Have I made the right decision? But when you get past that, and I think that happens to everyone, mate, wouldn't change it for the world. So I reckon just do it back yourself. And
I think I think too, mate, like we've both got some really great mates that, we're both interconnected with some really great people. Matty Morris, I'll use Murph, like, and it's, yeah, like it's,
and his alter egos. Yeah.
And his alter egos, yeah. And it's, mate, but it is like we've actually, we've actually got a really great little, everyone checks in on everyone, and it's really good to see. And like you and I have become good mates and often check in on each other, and that's what it is, mate. And I think that's the thing. Like, have your plan, and and put it into action, and that's what it's all about, mate. And back yourself. Like, the biggest thing I've learned, Mitch, is back myself. Like writing a book. Like, I didn't know how to write a book, mate. I was, I struggled at school, mate, and I'm now a published author. Like, saying that,
big shot order. Yeah, big shot author,
mate. Nah, mate. Still very humble. But for you, mate, what are the plans going forward with the kids and obviously your beautiful wife? What are your plans into the future, career wise, and just for you as Mitch Parker, just the dad?
Yeah, look, mate, as I said, I'll continue as long as I can with the Fireys on the side. Mate, everyone's got a 5-year goal. We've all got that 5-year plan of where we want to be in terms of our career, so I'll keep working with that. But, mate, it's really got to value. One thing that I sort of, I guess you'd say, I wouldn't say regret, but one thing that, I wish I could probably have it would change a little bit is, especially in my time, when I was at Dungog, I was on call with the police or on call with a fiery. So if there was something going down, I was on one of those vehicles. And there was a lot of time that I had away from my family, and your family grows up, your kids grow up way too quick, and so yeah, it's for me, it's really investing in my family time, building those memories, mate. And as I said, I'm probably like the modern day Captain Kodak. I take photos all the time, and I often reflect of them, and time just moves on so quick, mate. And I notice myself now, even at the fire station, we've got a very active station. We've got a lot of junior and younger blokes and ladies coming through, and it's funny, you become that old salty dog, but I don't want to be that sour dog, but that old bloke that's been around, it's got the stories, and and just, mate, I just want to value what I have around me, build those memories with my family, be there for my kids. They're so active in sport, be there for the wife, and mate, just build their memories that we can set them up for a really good future, and I can then be that old grey nomad, mate, with my, probably by that stage, a 400 series cruiser and the flash caravan. God knows what they'll have now, and we'll go and I'll have to lock up my whiskey collection because I know my boys by that stage will be sneaking into that. So.
Well, mate, I think, mate, it's a great thing. My brother says the same thing where, I take photos as well, mate, because and recently, mate, I lost a really close brother of mine, Nick Hill, the former 2 Commando veteran, and I didn't know that I would be, when he came to my 30th birthday last year, I didn't know that that'd be the last photo and the last opportunity I'd ever see him in real life. And, before he, obviously I kept speaking to him like we're doing via Zoom, and I talked to him 2 days before he passed. But I think, mate, you're right. You got to capture these moments because life is short, mate, and you never know. One day you can be here and the next day you're gone. So it's, I think, mate, absolutely. I'm very much the same, where memories are, and Facebook now, mate, and Instagram have become like, you don't need the photos anymore. You just upload them onto, it's like your personal, file drive of all your photos. But no, I absolutely, mate, I think it's critical that, and, I know for you, mate, you look back and some of your fondest, like I often speak to a lot of veterans and they go, oh, I wish we got more photos when we were in, uniform or, like that. And I guess for you, mate, as well, you probably back then just busy doing the job and wouldn't have known that you get the camera out and take some photos.
Mate, back in those days, I remember my mum said that because they had old photos, like my old man still pulls about old ambulance photos, and that's the old, photos, hands photos that we rarely see anymore. And I had the old, I don't know, Kodak, buddy, the modern day digital camera back then, but unfortunately they've disappeared into some broken down hard drive or whatever. But Look, it's like today, mate. I was down at the fire station just changing over some duty wear, and my young fella come down with me, and I said, "Yeah, mate." And he threw the turnout jacket on, and I said, "Get a photo," and he's in the room with all their gear, wearing my turnout jacket, so he's wearing Dad's jacket, and I've got photos of the early days, like of getting awards with the fireys or in uniform, and the kids are wearing that uniform and they're tiny, and he's about to hit high school now, and then I'm in front of the fire truck. So yeah, trying to just capture those memories as time goes on. But what you touch on about, you talk about your good mate Nick, and I know how much he meant to you, mate, because you told me that a number of times, and and it's really sad when you lose those sort of people. And I touched on earlier, there was a police boss of mine, Tony Townsend, and he was a Dungog boy, born and bred. He was very successful in what he put his hand to. He was a successful rugby league player. He was prosecutor. He was admitted to the bar in the legal profanity, but he was a chief inspector of police. I was actually working as a incident controller for the floods in Northern Zone for the New South Wales SES, and this would have been just trying to think now. It was either 21 or 22, and just time just gets on at him. I think it was 22, and because his funeral was last year. That's right. Anyway, poor old TT, he come in, he found a couple of medals. We talked about honours and awards back earlier. They were sitting around the bowels of the police station that were mine. And he goes, "Oh, yeah, are you over there at Maitland?" And I said, because Tony was the officer in charge of Maitland. I said, yeah, I'm here. And he goes, "Well, come over, I've got some medals for you." Anyway, so just by coincidence, mate, another friend of mine who I went to the academy with, who now works with the New South Wales Rural Fire Service in the Oppo program, he was working in with me as well. So there was a person I started the academy with in 2003. There was another mate of mine who's heavily involved in the Australasian and World Rescue space. Who's with the State Emergency Service, and then and Tony, and he'd actually a couple of my medals, and he come over and he wanted to formally present them. I was happy to have them awarded by postman, but he turned up and he's absolutely ripping into me, and you've already got this, I've got this medal, we've all got that, it's not that important. But unbeknownst to me, my other mate Dave was filming when when he was doing the speech, and then we had the obligatory photo, and I was proud, and I met a lot coming from that man. And mate, that would have been June, July, and I think about a month and a half, 2 months later, he passed away in his sleep, after a night shift at work, gone. And I'd forgotten that day that my mate had those photos, and he'd sent them to me again, and I went, wow, just to watch it. So it's life. Take all those precious moments, mate. Upload them to the super cloud, and or onto some hard drive. But mate, make sure you take plenty of photos, because life goes so quick.
Absolutely, mate. And I think, you've only got to look, as you say, like Tony was, such a great mentor to you as Nick was to me. And I guess, you look at your old man as well, like back in the days of, the old photos, as you say, they're pulling out the old. I remember those photos, Mitch. I do. I'm young. I'm old enough to remember, yes, the old wind up and point and shoot. And then
that's right.
The next,
go across.
Yes, I remember. And mate, I actually remember payphones and the old dial up TVs, and I remember those, mate. I am old enough to remember those.
Wind up car windows.
I do. Yes. And what's that? You actually have to look up a street directory. What? Oh, it's not Siri talking to you. Yeah, no, I remember all those too, mate. So it's I honestly say, mate, I reckon, well, as you say, mate, you had a good childhood, and so did I in the 90s and early 2000s. It was a great time and I think these days, mate, I guess with how we've gone in the world, like you say, capture every moment. But we're trying to outsmart ourselves now, and it's a different child. Like, mate, it too. It's a different time now for kids growing up today.
Yeah, it is, mate. It is, and very cognizant of that. But I guess the one thing I want to advise that any of those up and coming young first responders that. Just be conscious of what you're uploading to social media before you do it.
Because
it's there forever.
and you never know, mate. You never know future bosses watching or anything like that. And good point. So, mate, just before we go, for you, mate, Police Remembrance Day. How important is Police Remembrance Day? And what more can we as the public do to bring more recognition towards that day for you guys?
Yeah, so I guess your National Police Remembrance Day is essentially, the police and former police version of Anzac Day, essentially. And um, what what I find this year, as you know, I was down in Canberra,
Yep.
and how that come about is like I've attended a number of police remembrance days with as a police officer, and there's always that nothing more X than an X, and a little bit of awkwardness around. But I was down there supporting one of my very good mates, Matty O'Brien, who's part of the Heart to Heart walk, and they're all about raising that awareness and government support for first responders with post traumatic and premature mortality injuries. And so, mate, I actually went down there and I reconnected with another friend of mine, Alan Sparks. And I was down there with my wife. And, mate, I'd never been to a Canberra Police Remembrance Day. And as you said, mate, yeah, we pulled out the old blazer and the gongs and dusted them off. And, mate, it was really interesting because we spent a lot of time with it, and Al's a wonderful man, a beautiful man, as you know. He's a Cross of Valor recipient and very, very gentle person. And he said to me, "You're going to come march with me, Mitch?" And I'm like, "Oh no, that's not me. No, that's okay, Al." And he said, "That's okay, but yeah, the offer's there." And I think just the powers of persuasion, the way Al does it. Next minute I'm down there. Well, I say next minute, the following day I'm down there with him, and I'm thinking, oh, this is really awkward. But a fellow mate of mine, as you know, Murph, and another a current serving officer with New South Wales also marched with us. And mate, it was a very proud moment because you think that once you're out of the police, you're out, and that does happen with the treatment of some people. But you often find those people when they leave, then reconnect with you. But yeah, Police Remembrance Day is a solemn occasion. I have known several police officers that have died as a result of their duties, and also I've known a number of that have gone via, unfortunately, suicide, and that's not just with standard two police officers. I've also had a couple of really close, one particular close paramedic friend of mine that died through misadventure as well. So I think it's really, really important that there is a support, and walking down with that march in Canberra, it was like I didn't get a march out of the police station. I know my other mate did when I finished. I just literally locked the door and left, and that was it. I had a bit of a send off, but it was sort of symbolises that you march in and make such a big deal when you become a police officer, but a lot of police when they leave, and unfortunately, it's really restricted to a lot of the senior bosses get a formal parade where a lot of the constables and sergeants and so forth will just literally finish their shift and go. So, yeah, it was really, really fulfilling to walk down and be cheered and clapped, which is something I never thought I'd ever do, Adam. But to have a person, and our Sparks is like our Keith Payne, the military's Keith Payne, and
Yep.
and he can go wherever he wants, and you should buy him a beer and all that sort of stuff. But to be with someone of that man's caliber, and in being in the company of someone like him, and to be a part of it, it was really, and I know that for the 2024 Remembrance Day, I know there's a big contingent being organised for a number of former police and also even current police that want to get involved that won't normally be invited, by the police because of due to rostering conflicts or whatever. So it's really, really important, mate. And the people of any state or territory in Australia should get behind it, because who do they call when the chips are down, or even when they don't know who to call? Because we don't call. The society doesn't call the ambulance when there's a fire, and they don't call the fire when there's a medical. But when they don't know who else to call, they call the police. And who turns up? The police.
No, it's really, I wanted to bring that in because I know how special it is, and for you and all the guys, and that's why, mate, I advocate for our first responder brothers and sisters, mate, because we do have to get together, mate, and support each other, because mate, it too. You've seen a lot of good mates pass from suicide, and we need to, because at the end of the day, mate, we're different to defense. We don't have that support. We've got to get that ourselves, and I'm glad, mate, that Matty's doing what he's doing, and that walk was good on him for what he did, and it made, I think, the more that we get behind these sort of things, mate, and as you say, mate, we're first responders, mate, we get behind each other.
Yeah, we do, mate, and it really goes with the support of those agencies too. And as we saw at Government House in just in the suburbs outside of Canberra, there, we saw the Fire and Rescue's current commissioner down there in uniform supporting, which was really, really good to see, and alongside a number of other, and I'm not too sure who they were, but they were high-ranking officials, some other Canberra or ACT agencies supporting the cause. So it is real. First responder mental health is real. There's plenty of studies to support it. We need to do something now. We can see the attrition rate of a number of different agencies, in particular the police, with different things. So get behind it, mate. But that, by the time this goes out, Adam, Heart to Heart might have a different name. Who knows? But yeah, mate. Yeah, what those crew did. You think? Can you imagine? Walking from the geographical centre of Australia to the Australia's capital, with a bunch in a 3-month period. And they walked every step, mate. They took it in turns. Don't get me wrong, but. And it's for a valid reason. So, mate, we need to get behind them. But really, in terms of volunteer, like your emergency service Memorial Days and all your National Police Remembrance Days, they really should go, because we've been going. The police have been going since 1856 or something like that.
1856, I think it is. I think
1850 something.
I think New South Wales is the oldest. It's the oldest police, isn't it? Or
1862, I think it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, and the Mounties are the oldest. Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
And they've been going since then, and that's where the Border Fire Commissioners come, because every little town had a little fire station, which was made up of their community, which now came into what we see today as your fire and rescue, and then also rural fire service. So it's always been going forever, and and we will need these services, unfortunately, to continue, mate. So. Yeah,
absolutely, mate. And I know, mate, you're very proud of your service, and so you should be, mate. And is there any plans of writing a book, mate, and getting your story down into a book? Or
mate, I've really gotten into a lot of those books of the last probably 12 months. That they've come from your defence, your leaders or your operators to and even your current or your former first responders. So, mate, I have thought about it. I often get told I have a unique service and skill set, from different agents or experience, and I have thought about it, but once again, to the time. But I don't know, mate. I might get some tips from the Adam Bloom author.
Oh, mate.
I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to. I think it's great. I love reading. As I said to Alan Sparks the other day, my young fella. One of my wife's work colleagues is not doing too well at the moment, and my wife was going to she's given her Al's book to have a read, because that's a really good inspirational story of going down and coming through the other side. And I said, if my 10-year-old son's reading it, and he said, Dad, do you have a Cross of Valor? And I said, no, son, I said it's a very special award. There's only 5 Australians ever been awarded the Cross of Valor. And he goes, oh. And I said, how are you finding the book, mate? And he goes, it's pretty boring, Dad. It's he goes, I'm reading Batman at the moment. But I said that to Al, he was in stitches. But for my son to sit there and read the forward and the start of Al's book, it was for him to ask what the Cross of Valor is, and that's what it's about. Yeah, I guarantee you now, if I ask you what it was, you know what it is.
Absolutely. So. And mate, I think, it's I've only ever heard good things about Al, and trying to get him on the podcast, mate. It's hard to get him, but he's definitely, mate, what he's done, and all the other Cross of Valor guys as well there. And it's interesting that you bring that up, because it's the Cross of Valor is not very well known in Australia, and it should be, it should be known more. It's actually a real, it's a shame that people don't know more, and they think, oh, the Cross of Valor. No, you're talking about the Victoria Cross, and it's like, no, it's a different. It's it's the old George Cross in that's what it is. It's the old George Cross, and it's a shame that a lot of people don't know much about it. And like you say, the Star of Courage, and recently, mate, this podcast I put out today, well, this will be a while after, Steph Baroshki, Star of Courage, mate, and what she did, like just amazing. And these stories should be told, mate. And you're right, yours is a unique story too, mate. And yeah, hopefully, mate, one day you can put pen to paper and get it down, mate, because it is a proud, mate, as you say, like you've served your state and your country, and mate, just amazing what you've done. And for you, mate, before I let you go, is there any leadership books that you read to like sort of help you with your leadership and your management sort of with what you're doing now?
Yeah, look, I think one of the leadership books that really sticks to me is Bram Connolly's book. The Commando Way, I think it's called.
Yep. Yeah, the Commando Way. Yep.
Yeah, so like obviously, like I don't work in an SF environment, but it's leading people essentially is the same principles. It's like incident control. It's the same principles. You just adapt it to your environment. So I found that really good read. But I think as overall, just reading, like I've finished Craig, like Simpson's brother. Simpson's I say Simpson's younger brother. Yeah, like Craig's book, that's a really good read, and he's gone through the adversity and just a bloke, mate, shit hot operator. You read his stories and what he's done it's sort of, they all have their snippets of leadership as well, because most of those sort of people have been in leadership in some way. But yeah, I think the most I've taken out is Bram Connolly's books, The Commando Way, mate. I think that was a really good learner for me, even down to it put me from I only have small coffees now, and that was it's sort of don't make it a habit, so
absolutely.
So, but yeah,
I've read them too. I've read them too, mate. I'm halfway through Craig's book, and I've read Bram's, and it is a good book. It's really good, and like you say, it's we're not special forces, but you can adapt the same principles into day-to-day life, like and necessarily, mate, you don't have to necessarily be in a first responder capacity to implement what Bram's talking about.
Yeah, and look, I know when I took on my senior role with the SES, I'd sort of gone from, essentially between the fires and the police looking after very few people to looking after a huge area and a diverse workforce. So I had a really steep learning curve in terms of leadership, and so some of the Jocko Willink podcasts were really good as well. Some of the stuff he talks about his earlier days in the sort of world, but. And even the other sort of very well-known leaders, Simon Sinek and things like that. It's really important. But what I like to do is, I look at the leaders that I had in the police force and the fireys, and as I said, I've recently started with a mentor now, who's very, very skilled and loaded with lived experience in the EM world, and really and I used to like to take snippets of different people and what I thought were the good points to put together. Because, I've got another mate of mine who's a senior role with the Rural Fire Service, and he talks about in other agencies about being a junior leader, and he goes, "I was shit." And look, mate, we've all made those mistakes, but that's all about our learnings, and then we can pass that advice on to people as they're up and coming, to them, mate. So, yeah, mate, it's very, very important. Leadership is the old style of the old management dictator. He's well and truly past, mate.
Absolutely. And mate, I'm laughing because, like you say, you can pass it on to future generations, mate, whether they choose to, take it on board or that's another story and could be another podcast. But mate, it's whether they listen, that's it, mate. Any young person, listen to people that are older than you. They've been through it and they're trying to help you not make the same mistakes. So biggest thing I've taken away, mate. But Mitch, I'll wrap it up now with a quote, mate, that I really believe sums up your story. You, as I said, you've served your state and country with honour and served your family with pride. You are the true example of what it means to serve and give to others. Your story is one of true grit and honour. The quote is, "Courage is looking fear right in the eye and saying, 'Get the hell out of my way. I've got things to do.'" Mitch, you have done this throughout your career in both the police and also fire rescue, and it has been an absolute honour and a privilege to have you on True Blue Conversations and share your story. So, Mitch Parker, thank you so much for coming on True Blue Conversations.
Mate, Adam, thanks for having me. It's been a blast. It's probably a lot of ramble. You'll edit out. But no, mate, I'm happy to be here. Happy to get my story out. And, mate, what you are doing is fantastic. And don't you stop either, mate. So
Thanks, mate.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of True Blue Conversations with your host, Adam Bloom. See you on the front line.